Hi, y'all. Carla here. While we take a short break before season 4 of Let's Go There begins, we wanted to bring back some of your favorite conversations from this past year. These episodes meant so much to me, and I know they'll spark something for you too, whether you're hearing them again or for the very first time. So sit back, enjoy this refeatured episode, and I can't wait to be back with you soon for all new conversations. Hey, y'all. Let's go there. Joe Hudson, the infamous F.U. Joe.
That's how you first got to know me, was fuck you, Joe Hudson, if I recall correctly.
I actually am going to say that we're the ones that gave you the moniker. Specifically, Sarah Robb O'Hagan gave you the moniker.
That is
in
correct.
response to something you said to her
Yes.
that made her cry. And she said, fuck you, Joe Hudson, and it stuck.
Yeah.
And
You named the moniker. Absolutely not the first person to say "fuck you, Joe Hudson" when I said something to them, but
first
you
to
all
name
you were
you.
like, "That's it. That's who you are from now on."
Yeah,
And do you know, because of that, my Twitter handle is "fu Joe Hudson."
Oh my God, that's amazing. I love it. I love it. Okay, so I'm not going to lie. I'm super nervous. I'm super nervous. You mean a lot to me, and I want to get this right.
If it doesn't go right, we'll do it again.
The beauty of it. Yeah, the beauty of editing and recording. So speaking of how we met, so I want to talk a little bit about how you came into my life and what you mean in my life. So you came into my life through a mutual friend. You were coaching a mutual friend, and soon thereafter began coaching another mutual friend. We were having a women's weekend in California, and this friend surprised us with you and your wife, Tara, and we did an exercise with you guys for about a half day morning sort of thing. And promptly after that, you started to work with another girlfriend of mine who was a CEO at the time. And I remember thinking, holy smokes, I'll have what she's having. The change in her was so profound and so significant that I thought, okay, this is the person that I want to work with. And that was in 2018, I think. Is that right, Joe?
Yeah, I'm not good with dates, but
Yeah,
it was
I think it's
somewhere in that period.
Yeah, I think it was 2018. And we've been working together ever since. Although I did resist it a little bit in the beginning.
First of all, I just want to say how much it touches me that I don't want to let that moment pass where you said I'm really important to you. You're really important to me too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you changed my life. And the life of my husband and my children and everybody that I love. Yeah. Because you helped me reconnect to my heart. And you tricked me. Because I originally thought that you were an executive coach. And then I quickly said, damn it, you're tricking me into doing therapy, which I was very resistant of. And then come to find out later, you're not even a business therapist. You're not even a personal therapist. You're a spiritual guide in my life. How does that hit
not
you?
sure if I want that moniker, but I'm with you. I understand what you're pointing at for sure. Yeah.
What makes you not want the moniker?
You know, what I notice is any name that you put to it, spiritual, self-development, any religion, self-awareness, any name you put to it, it does two things. One, it turns off a certain group of people, not because they know it, just because somewhere somebody in their life got fucked by it, and or because it like sets up an expectation rather than just showing up and finding what's actually there in the moment with somebody. I stay away from it. And at the same time, I'm definitely delving into all those realms to some degree. I definitely, as that I will spend a tremendous amount of time just talking about business tactics, and then spend a lot of times about the underlying subconscious things that are happening that are preventing your business success, and then, or happiness or fulfillment. And then we'll also talk about I don't even know what the word spiritual means as much as the way I view it is that it's waking up is growing up and growing up is waking up. That our nature is to see ourselves as one with everything. As long as the trauma is dealt with and we get a chance to mature through that trauma, then that's just the nature of what we are as humans.
Well, that has certainly been my experience with you.
Yeah.
You know, if I were to describe the journey, before you came into my life, I was really dialing in the wellness. So it was about fitness, it was about nutrition, it was about getting my health right. And then you came into my life when I realized I needed to reconnect to my heart and that I was just operating from the neck up. And then something started to happen early this year. I mean, I guess it really started to unfold about a year and a half ago, but it really hit in earnest this year, where I had a very significant awakening, and you were the one that actually put words to it. So I was scared. I remember texting you saying, I think I need to commit myself. I'm losing it. And you were the one that said to me, hey, a little bit less resistance would be great. And I think you actually even said that it could be dangerous, which I want to talk about. But you gave words to it and said what you're experiencing is a spiritual awakening. And I was terrified in the beginning because I didn't understand it at all. But it culminated with me feeling connected to everyone and everything. And that has not worn off. And seeing all of us as just iterations of the same being.
Yeah, that's how it works. And that your system in particular, there's, generally like 5-ish kind of human systems, and your system is something that's in a lot of executive women in big companies, which is when I meet them, they're kind of rigid. They hold their jaw a lot. They're keeping it all together, and they have learned how to control like this tremendous thing. But what actually happened was when they were little girls, they were extremely sensitive, and it just became way too overwhelming to feel that sensitivity. So they learned how to buckle it down. And as the progression happens, as they get in touch with the different parts of themselves, it opens up again. And because they're extremely sensitive, that opening up is very electric, I think is one way to describe it. And the emotions can be very big and the feelings can be very big, and there's this huge sensitivity to it. And literally in our last week long that just ended a couple of days ago, there was 3 such women in the group, and they all had a very similar experience and having, difficult integrations, which is it's not uncommon. And it's really cool to be able to say, oh, this happens. Yeah, don't worry. This is part of the deal. Yeah, it's quite a journey.
Yeah, it's assuring, I would say. It's reassuring when you say that oh, this happens, or I've seen this before, or this is what you're experiencing. Okay, so I wanted to wait until later to talk about your work, but you mentioned it, so I'm going to bring it up. The week-longs. So you do a week-long called Groundbreakers, which is very significant. Both my husband and I, as well as friends that I love, have experienced it. And it was completely life-altering for me. In fact, when I went to my first Groundbreakers, I didn't follow instructions, and I was not, you're not surprised by that. I didn't follow instructions, and the next morning, I found myself hosting a meeting with our CEO and all of my peers on Zoom from the very site where we had Groundbreakers from the same city. And it was 6:30 in the morning, Pacific time. And the CEO's coach was on the call with us. And after the call ended, the CEO's coach texted me, was like, holy shit, have you just had an ayahuasca journey, or what have you just been through? It's beautiful. And I just come off of Groundbreakers where my heart had just broken open. And so tell us a little bit, Joe, about your week-longs and what that process is, as much as you feel comfortable sharing.
The week-longs are, what I notice is that I'm scared people will immediately want to do the week-long, and it's really by invite only, the week-longs that we do, because we just don't have the capacity to do them for a tremendous amount of people right now. We had been doing these 4 days intensives with with executives. And then we do 6 of them. So it'd be like an 18-month every quarter come together for 4 days. And we realized that we wanted to experiment, and we realized that a 7-day was going to be far more effective. Just one 7-day could be far more effective. And so we created it, and we've been iterating on it ever since. It's almost the same as when you did it, but we still are constantly tweaking to see what we can do. We measure it every time we do these surveys, so we can and use this researcher, and it used to be from Harvard, and just to make sure that we're doing good quality work. And so we're really concerned about that. But the concept behind it is you have a negative self-talk in your head, and we address it. We give about 7 tools on how to work with and change the negative self-talk in your head. And that's really a deep awareness and a love for it and a respect of it, and not trying to chase it away and not being in a battle with it. And at the same time, seeing it for what it actually is. And then the other thing that's happening there is we're teaching emotional fluidity. So we're teaching people how to actually feel the emotions that they have. And those are the 2 core. There's a third part of it, which is really teaching people pleasure, allowing them to really feel how pleasurable it is to be alive. And the way we think about the work is that there's the intellect, and then there's the heart, and then there's the gut. And the intellect is very much about cognitive thought and brain. The heart is very much about the emotional fluidity, how easy emotions come in and out of our system, how much resistance there is there. And then the gut is about a feeling of safety. And so it's very nervous system based. So I think about it also as like the human brain, the mammalian brain, and the reptilian brain. And so we're working on all 3 of those levels and that's, I think, what makes it so effective, why the research shows that it changes negative self-talk by a standard deviation. It changes neuroses by close to a standard deviation. It changes openness by close to a standard deviation. It increases a psychological term called thriving, which means how well you think your life is going, by a standard deviation. So we have massive effects, things that, the researcher was like, this, I don't know anything else that does this. And so where it comes from is 25 years of my misery, for lack of a better word. It comes from my history of trying to find some way to be with myself, and going and finding all these tools from all around the world, and then refining them so that they would work for me and my particular path of experimentation. So I like you, couldn't follow the rules. I had a massive authority issue. So I wouldn't take anything anybody said at face value. I would say, okay, that's an interesting idea. I'm going to go test it. And so I would constantly be doing tests with myself to figure things out. And that's where it comes from, is that series of tests that I ran for myself. And it's why there's such novel tools in there that like we haven't found anywhere else as well.
And you mix a lot of modalities too. You pull from a lot of different practices.
We do.
Okay.
We do.
So you brought it up. So I want to talk about it. How did you get to be who you are? So what was it that kicked off this? You said your own suffering, but what was it that kicked off this 20+ year journey to become the person that you are today?
Yeah, there's some pretty big rocks in the stream, so to speak, that got me here. The first one I would say is that I had a very beautiful first 7 years of childhood. 7 or 8 years, I had a father who was loving and played and like took the train just to work, and we had enough money. And my mom, and maybe that part of it wasn't so beautiful. My mom was one of the early career women. She was a professor, and she was a little rigid and strict, but generally I had a nice loving upbringing. The occasional slap or something. But then
The
Dad
occasional
became
slap
alcohol.
or something. That's significant. I like how you speed bumped that one, but keep
No
going.
speed bump about it. I have this very clear memory of this moment where my mom has us in an elevator at her work. She was teaching at a university in Connecticut, and she was so pissed at us, and she like slapped both my sister and I with like a single hit. And it wasn't like I wasn't bruised or anything. It was like, shut the fuck up. And I'm not excusing physical violence, but it wasn't like a beat. It was like a sting. And the dean walked into the elevator at the exact same moment that my mom did it. I remember that moment, which was an amazing moment. But that was pretty rare. So generally it was like a loving household, and my mom was a bit overwhelmed at times and was rigid, didn't really have emotional access. Still doesn't. So I think I've only seen her like cry once, maybe. So, but then as I got older, Dad became much more of an alcoholic. Then it got really, really, really brutal. So that was the first. I think I was very lucky to have that first very loving, for the most part, 7 or 8 years. There were some issues with it, but that I could go into that affected the rest of my life. And then there was like the next, from say 10 to 18, and that was brutal. That was yelling every night, like brutal.
Okay, so you just said there were some issues in it. What does that mean?
When my mom, when we had our first child, my mom suggested that we change her diaper at 3 times every day so she could learn how to poop on our schedule. Right. So, and that sitting in poop was like a mud bath or something like that. And so it was one of those things where, I recognized, I'm like, oh, that's why I don't know my needs. That's why I have a hard time understanding what I actually need, or why my needs are bad, or why I feel guilty for having needs, or any of those things. So there was this way in which my mom did not parent by attunement. My mom did not parent, was not a nurturing mother. So I was anxiously attached, to use those words, where I was constantly looking for some form of validation, particularly from women. So like in my 20s, I was an absolute slut, just trying to get any kind of love from any woman and then rejecting the love at the same time, which is, I think, common in both men and women who have emotionally unavailable parents. I don't think I know that that's common.
Yeah.
I'm not going to hedge that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and then it was brutal. Your dad was an alcoholic.
My dad was a crazy alcoholic. He would wake up in the morning and drink like a glass of vodka, like 8 ounces of vodka.
Oof.
Never be really drunk, maybe a little slurring. So it was like a maintenance drinking, but it was a lot. I think like a half a gallon every 2 days or something of vodka. It was a good amount of vodka. Jim Beam in the afternoon. And so my role in the family was to be the problem that they came together around, which kept the family unit intact, right? So there was clearly problems in the marriage with a man who was drunk all the time and a woman who was in Al-Anon and emotionally unavailable. And so instead of fighting with each other, they would fight through me. And so I was the problem, and my mom would pick one side, my dad would pick the other side, my sister was the good kid. So I remember moments of yelling at the kitchen table. Like my dad and I would get in these 2-hour fights every night. This is when I'm like in the 7th grade. And so I'm like 13, 12, maybe something like that, just yelling. And I'd be like, fine, Dad, you're right. He said, see, I told you were weak. Like, I told you you're a quitter. So there was really no way. He needed the fight, and I was the person to give it to him. And my role in the family, but also my personality, like what I came into the world with was, a very willful. And so this is what gave me the authority issues later in life, that I just couldn't trust any authority. And so it was, I again did not trust love, again felt that love was abuse. That was a big lesson in that for me. I also I felt everybody would emotionally abandon me. And if they didn't, I would force them to because I was recreating that pattern. And I think that's that piece was like one of the biggest unlocks in my journey was, oh, I got taught this pattern as a young person. And that pattern made it so I had to not feel something emotionally. I had to not, I couldn't feel, oh my God, my parents are fucking nuts. They're crazy and they've emotionally abandoned me. Because if I did, like my whole world would implode. I'm freaking whatever it was, 11 years old, whatever you are in the 7th grade. So that was not a feeling that I could feel. And my system kept on wanting to feel it because that's how we get back to homeostasis. That's how we balance. And so I just kept on recreating this emotional abandonment in my life over and over and over again until finally I could welcome that feeling of abandonment. And then that was the first time that I noticed it. Oh, if I can totally welcome and love that feeling, which I did, not because I knew any better, just because I was like, I'm avoiding this and I want to not avoid it. The pattern just dropped. Oh, holy shit, I'm not emotionally abandoned all the time anymore. That pattern's gone. I'm not attracting those women. I'm not attracting those business partners. I'm not. And that's became a big core part of my work, which is the emotions that we're avoiding, we are welcoming in the exact way that we're trying to avoid them, because we have a pattern underneath that we are recreating so that we can get back to homeostasis.
Yeah, we invite the thing that we fear. That's the thing that you've taught me. And one of the most significant things that I've learned through your work is understanding the emotional patterns that I have and that I follow, which I recreate over and over in different environments at home, in the workplace, and then which ultimately are undermining me and kind of proving myself right with my own disappointment, if you will. And I would say seeing those patterns for what they are is at the same time maddening, and when you can see what you're doing, and tremendously enlightening when you can pick a different path and do something different, and then see a completely different outcome in your life and in your relationships and in your work. So how did you get to the point where you saw this pattern, Joe, and how did you break it?
So I was always fascinated by human psychology. That I was born into that. I remember even in, like, I was born and raised Catholic, and so I would go to CCD, which is the training, how they train you to be a Catholic, and then they ask you to be confirmed. And luckily, my mom was like, asked me, "Do you want to be confirmed?" I said no. But what was clear was that I was super interested in the teachings of Jesus, and I knew all the parables, and I correct the CCD teachers. I was so interested in it, and then that kept on going. I was interested in, like, I collected parables from different religions and saw that they were very similar across all these religions, saw the stories were the same with slight variations. And so I was absolutely fascinated, interested in psychology, did human development degree. So I was just absolutely fascinated by it. It was always where I went. And then when I met Tara, a whole bunch of things happened, but one of them was that she asked me to do some things before we got married. One was to do a 10-day silent retreat. One was to go to a therapist with her and then travel, backpack through Southeast Asia or some such place. We ended for 6 months to see if we could survive it. And the 10-day silent retreat, I had this moment of feeling one with everything, God's little drug dealer. It was 8 seconds. And when that happened, I was, whatever the fuck that is, that's what I'm here to do. That's what I'm going to try to get back to, which created over a decade of hell. And luckily, I went through that because it created all these tools, but I was constantly really trying to find something that was my nature. And so that obviously is a bit like a dragon chasing its own tail. And so, but in that process, I just consumed every single modality that I could find that might teach me something, and then run these experiments over and over. Is this real? Is this, what are they talking about? Let me verify, let me try it out. Let me create an experiment to see what would work and what doesn't work. And what's bullshit and what's fantasy, what's religious and dogmatic, and what's actually viable. And so that's the how it all happened, was just consuming and experimenting, to the point where I quit doing international stock lending and other things. And I spent 7 years almost sitting in a room meditating. So if you ever think that your journey has been tough, you can think about that. And my poor wife, who was like, you're not making any goddamn money. What are you doing? So literally I sat in the shithole of a room in LA and just meditated for 7-8 hours a day.
Are you telling me that I'm 2.5 years into a 10-year journey?
No, not at all. Hopefully, I would have to be a pretty shitty teacher if I couldn't at least improve on my.
Oh my God. But there's some mirrors here that I don't think we've talked about before. So
I will say something, just because you're 2.5 years into an infinite journey. This doesn't ever, there's no end. It's not like evolution stops.
Fuck you, Joe.
We like to think there's like some moment of complete and total enlightenment. And that's like the religious thing. I've never seen that. What I've seen is humans growing and evolving, and nobody being perfect.
Totally. You made me think of something. I was talking to my shaman and I was like, I think I might need to go back to the medicine because I think I have one thing left to do. And she's like, oh, really? Just one thing? And then you're done. But,
Exactly.
But there's some correlations that we haven't talked about, which is, I don't know if I've told you this, but I grew up in a really religiously diverse part of Dallas. And my parents, being atheists, well, my mom atheist, my dad agnostic, told us that religion was a personal choice. And they would support us going wherever we wanted as part of our exploration. And so my sister and I went to, everything from Unitarian to Greek Orthodox to synagogue, with our Jewish friends, to every denomination from a Christianity standpoint. And from a very young age too, I was also fascinated with psychology and the thread that I saw, the common thread that I saw between all of the faiths, and found it super fascinating. There's something else that I want to share. You were the one that really encouraged me to go on my first silent retreat. I've done 2 of them now. And I too experienced something very similar on my first one. What did you call it? God's little drug, or
God's drug dealer.
Yeah. I felt like I was on drugs after day 3. It was just like everything was technicolor. Everything was just so attuned, amazing love, totally blissed out, seeing things I'd never seen before. And that was just through silence, which is wild.
Wild. Yeah. You had also done a tremendous amount of work up until that point. So silent, my fear is somebody listening to this podcast will now walk into a silent retreat, expect that. Because they expect that, they will never get that. And then they'll be disappointed, which will take away the whole thing from the silence perspective. So, and you had also done a tremendous amount of work before that. So there's a way that you knew how to be with yourself that some people going in. For mine, that I did 10 days, 14 hours of sitting a day, I think maybe 12 hours of sitting a day. And so it was really intense and painful. And it was hell, 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 8 seconds of bliss, hell, 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 hell.
Yeah. Well, that was my second one. So to your point, I would say, I think I yelled at you at one point, not in my silence, during our check-in, but no 2 silent retreats are the same, I would say. And obviously everybody's an individual in terms of going in, but my second one was absolutely brutal in that way. There was nothing pleasant about it. And I struggled and resisted and was angry almost the whole way through.
Yeah, I remember.
I'm so mad at you. Okay, so you find yourself on this journey. You basically, do the equivalent of Deepak Chopra and sit for, except you did it for 7 years. And then what happens? What comes on the other side of this?
Yeah, so somewhere around 35 or 36 years old, I met a 5-day silent retreat. And I would say the quintessential piece is somewhere early in that journey, this question arises in me, what am I? And I just ask that question literally like 10 times a day. I don't ask that question spontaneously arises 10 times a day. And for the first, I don't know, 6 or 7 years of it, I think there's an answer. Hilarious. And so I'm looking for the answer. My mind is literally, well, if I'm my body and I cut off this part of my body, is that still me? That's not me. Like, what am I essentially? What is the thing that's always been there from the beginning till the end that's still here, that's never changed? Because if it's changed, it's not me. I was doing that kind of stuff. And then I realized it's about being in the question. There was no answer. I remember being at this one retreat with one of the people who I trusted, and I went to a lot of their retreats. There's a guy named Adi Ashante who's since retired. And I remember getting up and saying, every time I ask that question, my brain just goes silent. And some guy in the back just starts laughing. And I'm like, oh, so I, sat down, and there was like, whatever, 5 years later, I'm sitting in another Adi Ashante retreat, and somebody says, my brain goes silent, and I'm just laughing hysterically. And and then I was just asking the question and sitting in that question for years and years. And then one day that question it doesn't quite get answered. It doesn't quite just go away. There's no way to describe exactly what happens, but there was this very clear understanding that I don't want to put words to it, but something to the effect of I'm that which is aware, I'm everything. There's a lot of ways to describe, but I just knew I was one with everything. And luckily after that moment, the very next thought was, and this is never done. And so I know a lot of people who have had that experience of awakening, what Buddhists would call awakening, and they don't have that second epiphany for another decade. So they become defined by the awakening. I'm the awake. And I literally went to a wedding a little while ago. I think it was a year ago. And I had lost touch with a lot of these people, but I went to the wedding, and there they all are. And they're still defining themselves as awakened. So I was very lucky with that next thought, which was, this never ends. There's no ending of the evolution. And so for whatever it was, over a decade, I was so focused on getting to that awakening. And then as soon as it happened, I hardly fucking noticed it. I hardly noticed it. I remember it was like 3 months later, I was driving in a car with another person who had a huge effect on my life, a guy named Case, who's since passed. And I was driving, and I just started fucking laughing hysterically, because I realized the thing that I'd been chasing for so long happened 3 months ago, that the critical voice in my head had almost completely gone away, that the editor, that kind of constant editor, was gone. And I was like, I chased it for so long, and then it happened. I didn't even notice it. I found that hysterical. I think I laughed for the greater part of a couple of days. And which I don't know if you've seen that at a retreat, but it's great when that happens, when someone just starts laughing and they can't fucking stop.
I've seen it, and I've seen a lot of other things too, but I've seen it for sure.
Yeah.
So so I want to bring this back up, because it's something that I think about all the time. Like, what did he mean? So when you said to me, when I called you and I thought I was losing my mind, and I was going through my first kind of part of my awakening that you put words to, you said to me, a little less resistance is advised, and that resistance could be dangerous. What did you mean by that?
So just like I said, there's the head, heart, and gut. There's awakenings that happen in all of them. I don't like awakening as like a thing, because there's different things that can happen for different folks. The brain awakening, the prefrontal cortex head awakening, is, my experience of it is, you can't believe your thoughts anymore, which can be very scary for a while. And you see your identity becomes one with everything and nothing. Your identity changes so that things aren't personal. So people can, you motherfucker, and you're like, check that out. Like, life can't be so personal. That's what the head awakening looks like. And then it keeps on developing, but let's just stay there. The heart awakening is all of a sudden you just generally your default state is to be in unconditional love. And that happens because all the emotions are welcomed and they flow through you. And as that happens, there's nothing to resist. And so you can just be in that. It doesn't mean you don't have emotions that come and go, but a lot of the emotions start feeling similar. They're just different parts of a wave, if you will. You feel the bigger part, and there's just this natural default of love. And if other emotions come, there's no resistance. Yeah, look at that, I'm pissed. But the pissed, even being angry, you see it as a form of love. It doesn't like overrun your nervous system and you're yelling at somebody uncontrollably. Then there's the nervous system awakening, which is what you were experiencing in that, right? Which is that sensitivity I was talking about that creates a rigidity in a lot of people. So when we are at a retreat and we see somebody who's got that really strong rigidity, we know what's underneath that is that very big energetic awakening that can happen. My system, the awakening was very different when it came to the nervous system. Tara's was far more like yours. And so that one is, if any of them, that one seems to be the one that can be most discombobulated. If people resist it, I've seen people not sleep for a decade when people fully resist that thing. And if they try to control it, if they go back to trying to control it, it can be quite a wrestling match. And so it's a deeply enlivening, as you know. It is very electric. It is very big. It can seem overwhelming, and it's also very animalistic in the fact that like good things are being held, getting massage, doing yoga. It's very much, you need that deep nurturing and care to be able to process that in some sort of efficient way. And if you don't process it, if you start getting scared and your brain runs off with stories, which is typically what happens at some point, then that resistance can make the integration time long, and that can be incredibly hard on the body. And so doing things like acupuncture and massage and yoga, and I'm not saying those, it could be stretching and breath, and there's a lot of things that you can use to take care of
getting
that
water
system.
was big for me. Yeah.
Say again?
Getting in water was big for me.
Hot water is a great one. Yeah. Feet on the ground. There's a lot of things, and it's completely unexplainable, which is the hardest part for me, coming from such a mental place. It's very hard for me to understand what's happening there and be able to take it seriously. At least it was. It's not anymore, because I've seen so many people go through it that I know, okay, I know what this is and I know it works, but I can't explain why that whole system does that. But Western medicine, Western science can't describe it yet. But it's so real, and it happens to so many people, and I can see who it's going to happen to in advance. Like, I know that person's going to go through that.
You can? How did you know? Because
it's that rigidity.
I wasn't seeking it.
Right. Well, it's that rigidity. It's the, if somebody is really rigid and requires like a good deal of control in their life, that is the system that when they're doing that because they're trying to maintain this sensitivity, control the sensitivity that overwhelmed them as a kid. So when it gets unlocked, this is what happens. Literally at the beginning of a retreat, Tara and I will say, okay, we need to watch these 4 systems for that activity, for that happening.
Fascinating. Yeah. Well, I will say I wasn't seeking it.
No, nobody is.
Yeah, it wasn't like I was like trying to be awakened or thought, even though you had turned me on to Adyashanti and I had listened to other people and gone through it and listened to him describe it, it didn't really click. And I didn't ever think it was something that I would experience. But when you said to me, this is the next logical step in your journey, it settled my system. So thankfully, I was able to integrate it. And, in divine form, 2 people that bookended it happening with me were at my home. waiting to hold me in it had actually experienced it. And one of them is someone that you work with. And so he and his family were in my house, and I didn't even have to say a word to him. He could just look at me and see that it was happening. And it was really, really wild.
That's
Really,
cool.
really wild.
I
Yeah.
didn't know that. That's fan. I'm so glad you had that comfort and
Yeah,
that
that was
nurturing
Stephen.
and that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stephen and his family were staying with us, and Stephen totally called it. He saw it. I didn't have to say a word.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've talked a little bit about your work and we started to dive into it. One of the things that's super fascinating about you is, and we call it your party trick, is you can just look at somebody and see their traumas. A la the body keeps the score. What, and the other thing I will say is people that work with you, their musculature changes. The way I hold my face has changed. You know, things you physically change as well, which is really wild. I've seen people's faces change. We say people start to look younger after they've been working with you. What what is it? How do you see somebody and what do you see exactly?
So a disclaimer before I start. So what I notice is that when people see me do it, when people see me do rapid coaching, and there's a group of people who come to me and say, "Oh, I want to learn how to do that," and my response is always, the only thing I recommend is just deeply getting to know yourself, and then everything else will fall out of that. If you try to get the thing itself without doing the inner work, it can create damage for you and for other people. So that would be I say that to anybody who's listening who, oh, I want to learn how to do that.
I would also say, I think it's your gift. I don't think this is, I mean, I have to say, I don't know that it's totally learned because to observe you do it feels like this is just a gift that you have.
Yeah. I can't distinguish, but I know other people have it. I mean, Kara can do the same thing. You were in that third retreat where you saw Tara pulling out all the little emotional states of somebody. Basically, the way it works is there's no way that I can hold back an emotion without contracting a muscle. Like right now, if you're listening to this, stop feeling every emotion. And if you did that, you had to contract a muscle, if not a whole bunch of them. And so if there's an emotion that you don't want to feel over time, you will contract that muscle on a regular / toxic level, constantly holding back that emotional feeling. Thus, that's what we call rigidity, is someone who's constantly holding their muscle so that they don't have to feel certain stuff. And we all have it in us in some way. And so the emotions that you weren't allowed to feel or that you chose not to feel because of some set of traumas, and I don't mean trauma like war, car accident trauma, I mean the trauma of not being attuned to as a kid, what would be called in the literature complex PTSD. That shows in the way that you hold your muscle. So a simple, easy one is the one that I had as a kid. My dad was just constantly criticizing me. So I had what was called the critical parent hunch. And you can just look at people with that hunch. It's like, oh, they had a really critical parent. Or if anger is being repressed, there's a line here in the eye because they're trying to hold back this anger. And so there's certain cues that are like that. Yeah. There are certain cues that are like that, where it's a very specific, oh, that tucked butt means this. And there was a guy who, I think his name is Paul Ekman, does the micro expressions work, and where he tracked all the expressions of a human. And there's this like 1/12 of a second, they have this expression on their face before they can control it. So it's a way to read what somebody's really thinking if they're trying to hide it from you. And there's some police who have it. They tried to train people in it, etc. And his teacher, or the guy who he inspired his research, was a man who could literally look at still photographs of different cultures and tell you what the habits of the culture were. Oh, this is when they get married. This is how they interact. This is the level of physical violence because it was all in the body. So the body actually holds a lot of it. So that's a part of what's happening. Part of what's happening is that I just know the patterns of so many people. So when it looks like I can do magic, I just know the pattern. I know that body type does this, or I know that when somebody says, oh, I really want, I notice that I am uh, constantly trying to make sure people feel happy. I can ask, oh, so how does the resentment show up? Because the resentment always follows that kind of caretaking. So there's certain ways that that's part of what I'm able to do. And then there's a part of it that I just can't explain. And I can kind of explain part of it, and then there's kind of a part of it I can't explain. So I did a tremendous amount of breath work to unlock my musculature and the emotional work with it. And the more that I did that, the more I could just sense it in other people. And so I did 7 years of basically laying on a bed, breathing while somebody was pushing me so hard. Sometimes it got bruised and I'd puke. And there was like this whole experience that I went through. And that teacher passed as well, unfortunately. Yeah. And in that process, I just started to be able to read people better because I understood it in my own body. Just my body understood it, and therefore I could see it in others. And it didn't have a logical, it was almost as if I was more open enough that I had deeper empathy. And in that empathy, I could feel what they were feeling, which is mirror neurons. We logically understand it, or at least neurologically understand it. And so there was that was happening as well. So that part I can explain, but I can't explain how it's happening because it's an unconscious behavior. And then there's a part that I just don't fully understand that's happening. And Tara, who has a very similar ability, but in a different way, also will see very similar things when it's happening. We'll say, oh, did you see the way they looked older right there? That, but it makes no goddamn sense whatsoever. And yet it's consistent enough that it's happening for multiple people. And the people who we've taught to coach over 7 years will also have those same experiences. So there's some part that happens, but again, I can't logically put words to it.
It's super fascinating. And I will say there are a couple people that come to mind that literally look 10 years younger after working with you. So you're touching on, for me, what is a core part of your work, which is emotional resistance. And what is it that makes us resist emotions, Joe? And what makes them important?
Yeah, there's infinite reasons to make that makes them important. 3 big ones. If you take away the emotional center of your brain, you would cease to make decisions in any kind of timely way. So it would take you half an hour to decide what color pen to use. And the people who that's happened to, their IQ stays the same, but their life falls apart because they can't make a decision. So it tells us that it's the emotional center of our brain. And that's, loosely speaking, it's a little more refined than that. Basically creates our decision-making capacity. So we're not making logical decisions. We're making decisions to feel a certain way. We're using logic to determine what we think will happen. But the underlying core thing is what I want to make a decision that makes me happy. If you think about for a minute, all the decisions you've made to try to be happy or to not feel rejected or to feel joyful or to not feel scared, etc. You can just, all your decisions are made in that capacity. So if you don't have the capacity to enjoy all of the emotions that you have, then your decision making is going to be faulty. You're not going to even be able to see half the solutions.
This is something that you've taught me. And the hack for me is whenever I'm feeling overwhelmed, there's usually, and I'm unable to make even really simple decisions. I right away know that there's something I'm resisting. There's some emotion that needs to move through me that I need to access. So that's a hack that you've given me. But what makes us resist the emotions in the first place? How did we get here?
Yeah. So it was just when we were kids, we were just not allowed to feel those emotions. We basically had love removed, or to feel them was just way too overwhelming. So we stopped. It's as simple as that. So if you, for instance, every time you were trying to exert your will and feel like I have a place here, like feel that sense of presence, somebody yelled at you, or every time you cried, somebody made fun of you, which is what happened to me. They literally took pictures of me and made fun of, threw pity parties when I would cry. You stop crying. It's not safe. You push it down. Or if you see your father just get yelly, angry, abusive, then you say, I will never get angry. I'm never going to be like that. And so you just start holding back the emotional experience because you think it's going to destroy you, or because you're going to have love removed, or you're just not going to get the attunement if you have that emotion.
Yeah. One of the things that you say that I think is so beautiful is you say that joy is the matriarch of fear, anger, and grief. And in order for her to live in her house, she has to be with all of her children. Did I get it right?
Close. Yeah. I usually say joy is a matriarch of a family of emotions, and she won't come into a house where her children aren't welcome.
Yeah. Yeah. And so for me, that really was a huge unlock when you said that to me, because I realized that I wasn't getting to experience joy and love fully because I was resisting. In my case, it was anger. I feared anger.
Yeah.
And
I remember.
yeah, you're smiling.
It was so good. It was so good. Your anger was so good, and your release and your joy. It was amazing. That was like a huge heart opening moment for you. I remember it. It was like, whew.
Yeah, that was, I mean, if I were to think of like one of the moments where my life was changed, it was that moment with you and Tara. So I'll go there. I'll tell the story. It was, and I don't know if this is too much inside baseball, if I'm not supposed to be sharing this, but it was at one of your groundbreakers, and we were moving grief. And one of the things that you guys said to us ahead of it is, hey, some other emotions besides grief might come up. And if they do, you can go upstairs or you can leave the room. It's not to disturb anybody. And I remember thinking, that's weird, but I didn't really acknowledge it. And, I'm sitting on this yoga mat and I can hear, soft whimpers and people starting to move grief. And all of a sudden, I start breathing like this really deep, intense breathing that I don't feel like I have control over. Almost like I felt like I was going to purge. And I had something to purge. I just didn't know what it was. But I was like, and it was coming fast and furious. And I had to leave the room. And I went upstairs. And I just remember feeling fucking rage like I'd never felt before. And I didn't see anything else but you. And you handed me a tennis racket, I think it was. And I don't know how long it was or what happened, because I think I blacked out. But all I know is that I just raged and wailed until there was nothing left in me and I collapsed.
Yeah.
And then you picked me up like a baby. I mean, you picked me up, like lifted me up, carried me downstairs, and washed my feet.
Oh, yeah.
You washed my feet.
Yeah.
And I mean, I can't think of a more beautiful thing to do for someone. And then you laid me back down on the mat where I started. And then Tara, man, that woman has the best mom energy.
She does. She's pretty amazing.
Tara came in and held me. And then it was when Stephen came into the room, because he also left. When he came back into the room, I saw him as a child. I saw his face and I saw a child. And I stretched my arms out to him. And he came and made himself into a little ball. And he's much larger than I am, but I held him like a little child. And he fell asleep so hard that he started to snore. And I was pinned. I couldn't even get up. And I remember afterwards saying, my heart just broke open. And I felt love fully for the first time that I could remember as an adult. And Stephen saying, and I was the first recipient because it washed all over me and it knocked my ass out and made him sleep for the first time in I don't know how long. But it was a very, very profound experience that I will remember for the rest of my life.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember. That was lovely. So good. And that's a story that I think that people, you get this, there's a lot of things that want to hold back the emotions once you have learned that they're scary. And the first is the set of thoughts. And then the second, which is the more difficult one, is the body. The body's just like, no, I'm not fucking going there, because it is learned going there is hard or heavy or bad or some version scary, and I'm just not going to do it. And there's some wisdom to it in the fact that once you do that, you're going to start unlocking some memories. And if I recall correctly, some memories got unlocked from that about what you were angry at and some of the stuff you suffered as a kid. And so the body's like, nope, we're going to keep all that compartmentalized, because if we open it up, who knows what's going to happen? And it's not wrong. You don't know what the fuck's going to happen. In your particular case, it was showing up at a business meeting at 6:30 in the morning and what the fuck just happened? Like, loving the hell out of the entire company. And, and right, even that for some people would be very scary. For you, you were like, that was great. I loved the company. They felt it. I got phone calls. People were like, Jesus Christ, I want to follow you. But for some people, that would be extremely scary to show that kind of love to a company. Oh, what everybody's going to fire me, blah, 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 blah. And so it's just this very interesting dance, is because you don't get the same kind of control once you start allowing yourself to feel the emotions. And it gets better than what you're doing eventually. There's kind of that integration process, but eventually life is a lot better.
Totally. And I will say it was the path to authenticity for me. So it was the merging of the personal and professional selves. The wall came down. It was the path to much more intimate and closer relationships with my children and the people that I love. It was a game, again, it changed my life. Okay, so now we've talked about her a few times. I want to talk about you and Tara, because you guys have an amazing marriage, an amazing relationship, amazing girls. You're fucking epic parents. But it hasn't always been easy. And you're both very open about that. There was a time where you almost didn't make it.
Oh my God. Yeah, the first 2 years of our marriage and the year before our marriage was fucking brutal. I'm fucking we just learned all the rage and anger and dysfunction from our parents and just brought it right on into our marriage and our relationship. We yelled at each other. We never physically hit each other, but we threatened it. And there was a moment like where we were living on this ranch and she was like gunning her engine to like run me over. And I was like standing in front of her hood with like a pitchfork or something.
Get out.
No, serious.
That's some serious passion.
It was definitely hardcore. The fights were horrible. I would say that's what created the emotional side of the work for me, right? So the heady meditation, that whole thing was there, but I was using it as a way to control my emotional experience, especially at the beginning. But that's the thing, is like on a pillow, you can pretend, if you're meditating on a pillow, you can pretend you're at peace all you want. But, in marriage, you can't. It's either real or it's not. You're going to feel it. You're going to see it. In business, it's the same thing. It's one of the reasons I really love business as a form of practice, is because you actually have a result that you need to get. And so you're trying to find a way of being in the world that also allows for that result and to make that result aligned with what you are. And so business and marriage and parenting, those to me are far more effective practices than sitting on a pillow meditating, because you don't know if the first shit works. Don't get me wrong, meditated for years, love meditation. And there's something about that rubber hitting the road piece to a marriage, to raising kids, to business, that I just absolutely love. So yeah, Taryn and I went through it. And I'd say the first phase was, it's your fault. And all my friends were like, that was a bad choice in the marriage. You should get divorced. I'm sure her friends were saying the same thing. And then it turned into, oh shit, what we're doing is abusive. And we recognized that. And we created a set of agreements about how we were going to fight. It took us years to really get there completely in living those agreements. And then at some point, I don't know, somewhere in like the 2-year mark, there was a recognition that none of it was about Tara. That all my focus had to be on me. There was no blame that was going to get me anywhere. All that I could do was focus on what's my experience, what's my learning. Tara's going to be the way Tara's going to be, and my job is not to change her. Can't do it. Not my pig, not my farm. The whole thing is about how do I be happy? How can I be content as a human being, no matter what is going on with Tara? And that's where the focus became. It at the beginning, that was taking it as my fault, which is also horrible. Like, blame somebody else, horrible. Blame yourself, horrible. And then it just turned into, okay, if my system is in a kerfuffle, what is it that I'm here to learn? Doesn't mean I'm wrong. Doesn't mean I'm bad. Doesn't mean that what I'm asking for is wrong or right. All that shit's completely different than what is it that I'm here to learn around this experience, because it's my system that's in a kerfuffle. That's all I can focus on. And so that's where and once that happened, then our life got better and better and better and better. We've had a couple of years that have been dips, being sleep deprived with kids at the early ages, for instance, can get a little crazy, or different things have happened in our lives where we go through like a bit of a contraction, and we still to this day fight. And I think at one point we really thought the less fighting, the better our marriage. And now that's not true at all. It's how we fight is what makes our marriage great, because everything that's alive contracts and expands. Heart, cells, movement, tension is part of being alive. So for our relationship to be alive, there needs to be some tension in it. The question is, how do we deal with that tension, and how do we become better people through it? And if we're fighting that way, then fantastic.
Yeah. Terrence Real says, in order to get real intimacy, you have to be willing to say the thing that could risk it all. And so I really, for me, that's always kind of like the goal. Like, how can I actually and you know this because you're working with me, it's how can I actually verbalize and give words to what I'm feeling? How can I actually articulate it? Not trying to manage the other person's emotions, but just being true to myself. Knowing that it could risk it all, which is scary as hell.
Yeah, one of the ways that has worked for Tara and I in that is, if we are going through one of those big transitions, we'll both grieve our marriage like it's past. We'll go through the entire grieving process of the marriage failing. And then when you've done that, it's really easy to speak your truth, because you're not speaking your truth because you don't want to feel that the marriage falling apart. So let's go feel that the marriage is falling apart and then come back. And the truth is much easier to speak.
And the reality is the old marriage does die. You taught me that. You taught me that there's 3 marriages. Is it the 3 marriages?
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about the 3 marriages and how that works.
Yeah, you could do it by age, or you could just do it by children. There's like the marriage that is, there's 2 of us. There's a marriage of, there's the family, and then the marriage of, but there's just 2 of us again. That's how I see those marriages. And we transition it. I think about it this way. Instead of the 3 marriages, I think about it as, I just told you what I was like when I married Tara. It's been 25 years of marriage, and I'm this way now. That is a shit ton of transition that has happened. Tara, simultaneously, shit ton of transition. I'm not married to the same person I got married to. She's not married to the same person she got married to. We're completely fucking different human beings. So it's not the same marriage. It's like, and it's constantly changing. There's kind of 3 big bumps, but it doesn't really matter. What matters is, are you willing to meet the person where they are, love them for who they are at that moment? And that's really the capacity that is there. And sometimes loving them is drawing a boundary. The problem that I notice when I say that to people, some people will take that love them for what they are means I'm supposed to accept them and live with it. But it's, I accept them and maybe I don't live with it. Maybe I draw a boundary in this moment. Maybe in this moment I say, I love you. I can accept you just as you are. And I don't want to live with that.
Yeah, boundaries are super hard for me.
Yeah.
I'm still learning how to get them right in all my relationships.
Yeah. To me, the thing about boundaries that unlocked boundaries for me, the right boundary always opens my heart. So if I'm thinking about what's the boundary I need, I wait for the one that makes my heart open. I can love this person better with this boundary, no matter how they react to it. Because I'm holding back my love. I'm defending my love because I'm scared that I'm going to have to do something. Oh, if I love them, then I'm going to have to accept X, Y, and Z. If I love them, then I'm going to have to put up with X, Y, and Z. And so I'm defending myself. So the first part of the boundary is what's the boundary that immediately allows me to love them better? And then the second part is, how do I draw a boundary that's not in the control game, is not in a control power struggle? And so I'm not going to ask them to do anything. It's what I'm going to do. So when you yell, I'm going to walk out of the room. I'll be back in 20 minutes. And if we can continue the conversation, I look forward to it. But I'm not going to have a conversation with you while you're yelling, but I'm not abandoning you. I'm right here. That opens up my heart. And it's not about what they do. They can do whatever they need to do. I'm not trying to control them.
Yeah, it's just about saying it. Yeah. One of the things that you've taught me is about defended love. And I've really aspired to love in an undefended way, and how different that feels in your system and how much closer it can make you feel to someone. But it does require boundaries in order to be able to love in an undefended way. And
there's
being really
no
clear.
paragon of love that wasn't strongly boundaried. Like if you think of any paragon of love, Great Mother, Gandhi, Mother Teresa, Martin Luther King, they're the saints, whatever, they're all strongly boundaried. And so there is no real unconditional love without boundaries. There's also no real unconditional love without empowerment. If you feel oppressed by something, you can't love it, including a husband.
Yeah. And children.
And children.
So let's talk about your girls, because they are just amazing. And the relationship that you have with them is the sort of relationship that I aspire to have with my children. And not just because I want to be close to them, but I want for them what you've given me. I want for them to have the relationship with themselves that I have. I want them to be able to love themselves. I want to eradicate shame from their lives. I want them to have emotional fluidity. And that's not to say I've been successful. I came into work pretty late into their lives, but I'm working on it. What's been your approach, you and Tara's approach with the girls? Because they're just such amazing girls.
Yeah, so the early days was all Tara. I would have fucked them up good. And it was hand-in-hand parenting. There was some other simplicity parenting, which was really good, but the most powerful was hand-in-hand parenting. A book called Listen by Patty Whiffler is a great resource. They also have a great website. And the general practice there's 5 basic tools, but the general practice is you let them have their emotions. You basically let them have the full body emotions. You contain them, you make them safe, but you sit in loving presence of their emotions. Super easy to say, super hard to do. Also, one of the most profound practices of my life was sitting with my girls while they were having big emotions. And because everyone that I wasn't allowed became really fucking apparent because I wanted to control it in them. Huge practice for me, huge for them. And so learning from them that, every time they have this big emotion, they just go back into connection. And every time they don't, they're a little bit away from connection was such a huge thing. Oh, they're not bad kids. They just needed to cry. They just needed a temper tantrum. They just needed to get angry. And then immediately they're back to being amazing kids. Oh, what the hell is that? Oh, that's probably true for me too. Right? True for you. You got raged. Finally got it out. Boom, you're back to loving connection. This is just you can see it in kids. And so that was the early stages. Did a lot of that hand-in-hand parenting. And we were lucky to get them young enough where that was really the big part of their experience. And then that was really the form that we went to until they were 8 or 9 years old. And we still used it again, occasionally, like when one of them was getting bullied, we really allowed a lot of anger releases out. And they both still release their emotions. Esme, I don't know, a year ago, she's 17, she's at the table and she's having a hard time. And I'm like, oh, well, I'm being the dad. Maybe let's work on that problem or whatever it was. And she was like, I just need to be sad right now, Dad. Can you just let me be sad? I'm like, oh, yeah. So
the student has become the master.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. One of the most beautiful stories, I hope it's okay. I think it was Esme. I hope it's okay that we tell this story, but one of the most beautiful stories you have is the story of her first heartbreak.
Oh, yeah.
Will you tell us this story? Because it's so beautiful. And heartbreak, I would say, is probably the beginning of my defended love and closing off from my emotions. So I think it's why this one is so profound for me.
Yeah. So I always say that every time we allow our hearts to break, it increases our capacity to love. And she's heard me say this a ton of times. And so she was 8th grade, breaking up, and she decided she's going to break up with this guy. And we have to drive 20 minutes, So I'm like driving my daughter to a breakup. Fucking awesome.
Only
so
you.
I just drive her to this breakup and she gets out of the car and 30 minutes later, she gets back in the car and she's just crying. There's that heaving crying. And she holds my hand and we sit there and we're at this like Mormon church parking lot or some such thing, and she's crying and crying and crying. And then she said, you always taught me it was good to have heartbreak, but you never taught me that it could feel so good. And I know there's somebody listening who's like, what the fuck? That's bullshit. And it's such a critical thing to understand about emotions, which is almost every emotion feels really good to feel. The resistance to the emotion sucks. Fucking sucks to feel. And most of us have confused the resistance to the emotion itself. When you feel heartbreak, and we all know, well, not all of us, but many of us know that, oh, you have a good cry, you feel better. But you can just really enjoy the crying experience itself. And so she was literally feeling the cracking open of her heart. And that was just pleasure for her. And she's since had a couple heartbreaks that she has like struggled with. She cries, she does it, but she's like, and then she like lands it. But because of Tara, because they had that really great experience of having all of their emotions allowed, they do things like don't have to get drunk all the time. They're not in some pattern of being addicted to their phones. It's an amazing thing of how, if you're not avoiding the emotions, you don't have to do a whole bunch of things that you do to avoid the emotions.
Yeah.
Which we call bad habits. Overeating.
Yeah, to soothe. Overeating and, sorry, I interrupted you.
Overeating, phone, drugs, alcohol, all those things. And it was funny because Patty Whiffler, who's the one who started hand-in-hand parenting, told me that. She goes, I've met the kids that are 20 years old who were raised like this and they don't have these problems. I was like, let's see. And that seems so far to be the case with our girls.
Yeah, you taught me that. And I think that's probably one of the biggest lessons too. It's the resistance that hurts, not the actual emotion. And I've actually experienced heartbreak since doing the work with you. And I did experience what Esme experienced, which was like a breaking open, like amazing love on the other side of it. It blew my mind. But it was resisting it that was so super painful. And you even said to me when I was going through my depression, you said to me, you can resist this and be in your robe for the next few years, or you can actually let yourself feel it, and it's going to cycle much faster. And I think I probably landed somewhere in between, but it is really significant to recognize that it's the resistance that's the killer.
Yeah. And yeah, I always say if you can't love the emotion, love the resistance.
Oh, say more about that. Say more. Okay, this is
it's
the
just a hack. It's just basically, if you're having a hard time loving the emotion, then just love the resistance to the emotion, and then it softens the system. It's just a simple hack. That which we resist persists is a way to say it, but nobody really, so I'm resisting and I can't fucking stop. Well, one hack is to love the resistance, because you can have resistance to the resistance and then you're just in a clusterfuck.
Yeah. Okay, so there are probably people that are listening to this that are like, wait, I don't get this. This is Carla's executive coach. This is who worked with her in the workplace, and they're probably confused. And you work with some of the most powerful people that are shaping the future of our planet, and we can't talk about them for obvious reasons, but very, very significant players in our world, predominantly in the tech space. One, I want to understand, how do people come to work with you?
Yeah.
And especially because some of them are pretty big egos, for lack of a better way of putting it.
Yeah.
How do people come to work with you, and how do you break through the resistance? Like, I resisted you like hell.
Yeah. So if we take the heartbreak piece for a minute, basically the way I would describe this is, you're a little kid, you're looking for attunement. You're looking for being accepted and loved. And you don't get it, so you change your behavior, you change your emotion, you cry a little harder, you evaporate a little more, whatever it is, you're going to try all these things to get the attunement, and you're going to land on some dysfunctional behavior to get the attunement. But that core underneath it was that you were looking for love. Core underneath it, and that feeling that love is scary because you didn't get it. And maybe love gets wired with abuse, or maybe love gets wired with someone yelling at you, or maybe love gets wired with, I've done something wrong, or maybe love gets wired with shame, but love gets wired with something. And it doesn't matter how bad your parents were to you. You want that love. You want their love. Like, you might say, I don't want my parents' love because they're super dysfunctional, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the fact that if you click a switch and get really great love from your parents, every fucking person would hit that switch. Everybody wants that love, but we've also been raised in a way that we're scared of it. Like, you think that anger or sadness or fear is hard to feel. Feeling complete and total love is far scarier. And it's why you'll see people resisting that. I'll do an excitement release, and people can do about 5 minutes of that, but they can do anger release for like 40 minutes. You do pleasure, and people do that for like 10 minutes, but then they're like, okay, I'm kind of bored. It's like, wait, you were just feeling pleasure, which is everything you said you want. And now so the positive emotions are actually harder to feel, even though we want them. That craving of them is actually a pushing away of them as well, because pleasure is always available. Every breath can be a pleasurable breath. It doesn't require anything of us. Just sitting down and listening to the energy move in your body or the sensation move in your body can be an incredibly pleasurable experience. It requires nothing of us. It's always available, but we are not feeling that all the time. So somehow or another, the positive feelings get wired with something that's not positive. And so we're constantly wanting the love, but pushing it away. And we might be pushing it away by chasing it. We might be pushing it away by ignoring it. There's lots of ways that we can do it, but we all want it. So the question is, how do I do this work with people? I love them. I love them unconditionally as they are. Doesn't matter what they say to me. Doesn't matter what they do. I love them for who they are, which is what I learned how to do with Tara and what I perfected how to do, so to speak, even though it's never perfect, with my children. And so I'm sitting in unconditional love with my clients almost all the time. And if I'm not, then there's something for me to learn. So that's the how of it. The other how is that you have to obviously show some level of competence, right? So I was a venture capitalist. I can talk strategy, and I can talk strategy in a way that comes from a deep understanding of human patterns. So, and business, if it's anything, is a series of ideas and relationships. So the relationship side of things is, and so I will have some clients where I'm literally only talking about strategy with them for 90% of the conversation. Oh, how do we create this part of the business? How do you handle this kind of negotiation? And then we'll land on something where it's like, okay, I'm seeing a pattern where you keep on getting fucked up in this area. Here's the underlying personal pattern of that. Do you want to work on that? How badly do you want to work on the underlying thing? And how badly do you want to just keep on repeating this pattern? Usually that's the invitation where somebody's like, oh, right, I see. Every time I get into a negotiation, there's a bit of a fight. It's me against the world. Or every time I'm raising money, this and this and this is happening. And so let's look at the underlying issue. And then that opens the world to them. And some of my clients will go back and forth all the time between tactical and some of my clients are like, yeah, I got my business. I mean, I'm one of the top executives in the world because I know what the fuck I'm doing. What I want is to be fulfilled. What I want is to be happy. What I want is a good marriage. What I want is, and so that's where we'll work. And then occasionally what happens there, and not even occasionally, they'll have some breakthrough and then they're doing their meetings differently. They'll have some breakthrough and then they're handling their bosses, the CEO or whatever it is that they're dealing with differently, or their board of directors or whatever. And so it works both ways. Either way, it's going to affect your business. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, it's undeniable. That was going to be my next question. What do you see happen to teams when somebody begins doing work with you? What happens to their teams?
When somebody who is doing the deeper work with me, then their team develops almost in lockstep with them, especially if they're the CEO of the company. So, there's a great phrase, a spit at the top is a waterfall at the bottom of an organization. And so somebody learns how to process their fear. They don't have to manage people as much. They focus more on empowerment. They have a more empowered company. That empowered company gets things done because everybody acts like owners and they increase efficiency. Typically what happens is, I want to get things done. I want to be efficient. Efficient means you're getting them done quickly. But if you look at a fast car, that's not an efficient car. A fast car is a car that goes fast. An efficient car is a car that gets you there with less energy. Enjoyment is a great way to see how much energy you're using. If you get through the end of your day and you feel enjoyment through that day, you have more energy at the end of the day than you did at the beginning of the day. And so you're like, whew, I feel great and I can keep on working and this is amazing. And everybody around you feels great and they can keep on working and it's amazing. So that enjoyment is a great thing. And when a CEO sees that, then they start doing things like, oh, I want to enjoy my meetings. And if they start enjoying their meetings, the whole company runs better. We have this thing called 5-star meetings, which is, how do you make all your meetings into 5-star meetings? And when you do that, one half of the meetings are not necessary. But the other thing is everybody enjoys going to meetings, which means that they're freaking effective because nobody enjoys a meeting that's not effective. Everybody in these big companies, I hear them say it all the time of, wow, I fucking hate meetings. I'm always in meetings. Meetings suck. No, they don't suck. Meetings are fucking awesome. What sucks is that you're not getting anything done in the goddamn meetings. That's what fucking sucks about the meetings. You're faffing, you're debating, like nobody's making the goddamn decision. Everybody's trying to please somebody. That's not fucking operating. That's not effective. So as a CEO learns, or a leader learns, oh, here's how I enjoy myself. And here's how I enjoy myself in meetings. All of a sudden, all the meetings become more enjoyable for at least their direct team and eventually throughout the whole company. And this is this is how it works, is that the teams, and then eventually some of them will turn to me and ask like, okay, how do we structure a company so that and every company has to be different, but when they do finally do that and we really go into the company and say, okay, how are we going to structure it? Then you can create some really radical, amazing changes that deeply empower people. And I'll only do that with clients or people who've done groundbreakers, because the work is heavy duty, but at the end of the day, it's amazing work. I have one CEO right now who's basically, his number one focus is creating a culture that is deeply empowering for everybody in it and fulfilling. And it's amazing to watch what that company is doing, both in revenue. I think they like 500% revenue growth this year. Like I get notes from people in the company thanking me who I've never fucking met before saying, I love working here. This place is great. Thank you for everything that you've done. And I'm like, how do you even know me? I wouldn't even know that they would know me, but it's so clearly a positive place to work and everybody's so happy with it.
So that, in a lot of ways, that's how your work has inspired this podcast and my whole theory that we don't have to work the way we've been working anymore. That was one of the big epiphanies for me was, whoa, not only is this life, this existence a false construct, but so is the workplace. And we can dream up and build whatever it is that we want. It doesn't have to be toxic anymore. It can be enjoyable. It can be done with ease. It can be done with love. And one of the first outcomes of that was the story we were telling earlier when I came right out of Groundbreakers into a virtual offsite. And, the first thing I did was break into tears in front of everyone. And the response from my peers was literally over Zoom. Somebody said, I really want to hug you right now. Can we all just take a moment to hug you? And everybody went up to their cameras and hugged the screen.
Wow.
And then, it was followed immediately by somebody on their check-in telling me what I meant to him. And I was just like, holy shit, this is what life is about. This is how, and oh, by the way, the business outcomes we drove at that company to date have been the most significant and positive business outcomes that I've seen a company get to, the most significant transformation I've seen a company achieve in my entire career.
In your entire career of changing companies, like turning companies around.
That's true. In my entire career of turning around companies, that was the biggest one. Yeah. And simultaneously, I've also been rejected for it too, but that's okay. I've also learned that they weren't ready for my medicine and that wasn't the place for me. And it started to put me on a very different path.
Or some people in it weren't ready for you. Some people were ready for you. Right. And again, the results, even in that situation, the results you had were significant. Yeah, I think that the amazing thing is that there's a line, there's something that happens where an organization that's focused on, its primary focus is on the health of the individual in the organization is not functional. I would call that pluralism, I guess is the word. A lot of nonprofits fall into that category where they're not being effective because they're interested in like the individual. Is that individual okay? Okay. Is that individual? It's very codependent. That's one. Also, there's one where we're just going to drive and I don't care about humanity and fuck you and like, let's just get it done and fuck you. That's my money. It's just business. There's that world, right? Toxic. And that can be effective as far as like actually making money. That's not an ineffective way to do it. You can get away with that and be quite successful. There's plenty of people who have. And you can play off the fear of your employees and you can make everybody anxious and try to please you. And it can work. And I don't want to deny that can work. And then there's this place, and there's plenty of examples of this. I think the first book I ever read on it was a book called Maverick. I don't even know if it's still in print, about a Brazilian meat company that was doing it. And then there's books like Reinventing Organizations or the Everyone Culture. Not that I agree with everything that they're saying in there, but there's some companies that show you there's different ways of doing it and how effective it can be. And And that is where you can actually be human with one another and still understand that we're here to play. You know, we can be human and we can play. And so think of it like a sports team. You can have a coach who's a yeller and a screamer and everybody's scared, or you can have a coach like, you know, the guy who coached the Lakers during their prime, or I'm sorry, not the Lakers, the Bulls during their prime, or the coach who the Warriors, and they can actually create a sense of family and community, and it's very human, and they get great performance. But they're still there to win. They're still going to cut the person who's not operating. They're still there to do the job. And it's amazing to me when I have these conversations with somebody who's like literally built a $10 billion business in 4 years. And I'm saying to them, okay, so you can do that, but you can't run a business where people are happy. That's fucking fascinating. You can do that, but you can't be fulfilled in your job. That's weird. Funny how your mind says that's possible, but this isn't possible. And it's always just a matter of like what they emotionally believe or don't believe is, and what they can sit within themselves. And as they sit with the stuff in themselves, they just become more and more capable of seeing the reality. Because if they can't live it for themselves, if they can't have a boss-free consciousness, they can't have a boss-free company, right? If they constantly have something in their consciousness which is telling them, you got to do better, that wasn't enough, you fucked up, blah, 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 that's how their company's going to run. So when I go into a company like that, I look around, I'm just like, I know what's happening inside the CEO's head. I can tell you what's happening inside. I can tell you how they talk to themselves. And they will say, that's not possible. This is the way the world works. Okay, but of course, how could they see anything else? It's exactly how their head works. But clearly, there's evidence that shows that that's not necessary. There's other ways of doing things.
So you're making me think of something else that you've taught me, you and Tara have taught me, which is we're all just projecting onto each other all of the time.
Yeah.
And once you see that, you can't unsee it.
You can't unsee it. Yeah.
And it's almost, you're smiling. It is almost comical.
Yeah.
And so talk to me a little bit about the role of projections and how you see that play out in relationships and in the workplace.
Yeah, there's a lot of levels to projection. The one that's most useful for people to see is every time you're triggered, you're projecting what you're blaming them for is actually going on inside of you. You know, and the easiest way to see this is, you know, you're in a fight with somebody like, I'm not angry, you're angry. It's like, no. They might be angry, that's true, but you're denying what's actually happening in you and you're putting it on the other person. Another great example of this, if there's a CEO listening, or many, typical projection is that like, I'm alone in this. That is a typical, they get frustrated and I'm alone in this. It's like, no, as a matter of fact, every single one of your direct reports wants you to be happy and pleased with their performance. You are not fucking alone in this, right? But what you're projecting onto them is a non-caring about your status. And in that moment, what's actually happening is you're not caring about where they're at. And therefore you're not communicating well, and therefore you're not getting the help that you need. Those are examples of where, when we're triggered, we are projecting onto the other person. And when you can see that, there's great advantages for managing people, but also great advantages for negotiation. Like when you see the person get worried about something and triggered, you're like, oh, I know what's going on in their head. This is amazing.
They're showing you their cards.
Exactly. So there's all sorts of advantages for it. The key thing for that is it allows you to see exactly where you can work when you're triggered to give you more freedom. So that's one of the benefits. The other thing is whenever I see somebody wrestling, this is part of what allows me to see patterns in people really quickly, is when I see somebody wrestling with something outside in their world, then I know that same thing is happening inside their world. So if they're trying not to manage their husband, it means they're also learning how not to manage themselves. If they are deciding, do I want to be in a relationship? Do I not want to be in a relationship? I got hurt before. And I know that same thing is happening in 20 other places in their life where they're faffing or I don't know, they're overthinking. They're not actually in their wants. So wherever I see it, I know it's happening externally. I know it's happening internally. I know their internal dialogue has a reflection to the external the thing that's happening outside with people. And so that's another way that you can really use projection to understand how people work. And so as soon as somebody says to me, you know, I'm angry at my boyfriend because he doesn't accept me as I am, I know that their inner dialogue does not accept them for who they are. I know that's happening. There's no way it could, because if your inner dialogue really accepted you for who you were, there's no way you could be with that boyfriend, or there's no way that boyfriend could be like that towards you. And so that's another place where projection works. And so in a company, this is particularly useful because the company reflects the CEO.
You were the one that taught me that an individual's wants can be the wants of an organization, and that there's like a broader intelligence that plays a role there.
Yeah, so there's a study, I can't remember where it was done, I think it was Denmark, where basically the leaders who got the most loyalty were leaders that did two things. They were really, really clear about what they wanted, and they were really, really helpful towards their people. And usually you get a leader who's one or the other. This is what I want from you, this is what I want from you, or helpful, because people are more codependent or narcissistic, and they're on that scale. And it's the leaders who can do both, who can be really clear, this is what I want. And they should be really clear about their wants, because their wants are the wants that most reflect the organization's wants, because they're the ones that are seeing the whole organization. Everybody else is seeing a part of it. And this makes people feel safe. They feel, oh, I know what they want, so I know if I'm succeeding or not succeeding. I don't have to just like make them like me, which is where you get that shitty politics of big organizations. It's all about like who likes who, and that because it's not about, oh, this is what I want from you, and I'm going to be really specific about it. And then also be incredibly helpful. What do you want? How do we serve you? Southwest Airlines back in the day was really good at this. They understood that, as they used to say, my first priority is the employee, second priority is the customer, third is the shareholder. Because if the employee's happy, the customer's happy. If the customer's happy, the shareholder's happy. And they really got that. And so it's a similar thing as like, oh, if I can be of service, not codependent, but of service to the people who work for the organization, and I'm really clear about my wants, people feel safe and people feel seen, and they will perform incredibly well. And what's amazing to me is how long it took me to see this. And then almost every CEO I know to see this is nobody wakes up and goes, I want to be a part of a shitty team. Nobody wakes up and goes, I want to do crap work today. I want to do crap work today. You know what? It's like, today, I just want to do crap work. Everybody wants to wake up and feel like they've done something meaningful, that they've had purpose, that they've been effective, that the people around them are enjoying working with each other. They want to be in teams that are supportive and trusted. Everybody fucking wants that. And yet, so many leaders can convince themselves that nobody's listening to them and nobody wants to do a good job and they're all alone, and which really has more to do with the way they were brought up than any kind of reality. And as soon as they see, oh, wait, there's all these people here trying to support me. My favorite story about this is that one of my clients, brilliant technologist, has done all sorts of crazy stuff from, space stuff to driverless car stuff, and was dealing with one of the biggest Silicon Valley narcissists who just would get in front of the teams and yell, why are you all fucking blah, 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 blah. And one day she was doing her work, and so she just looked at the guy and said, I see how much you care. I see that what you are pointing at is wise. I really want to make sure you get your goals met. but it's hard for us to do it if you're yelling at us. And he yelled at every other team, but for the next 2 years, stopped yelling at her team.
I love that. Okay, so you brought it up. I want to spend a little bit of time on narcissists because this is such an overused term right now. It's making me bananas.
Yeah.
And it's been weaponized.
Yeah.
And so give me your take.
These days, it's better to call somebody a fucking asshole than a narcissist.
Right? I mean, let's just call it what it is.
Yeah.
But tell me, what's your take on narcissism?
I fucking love narcissists.
You should know you work with them.
So what do I think narcissism is? So I'm not talking about narcissistic personality disorder. That's a different thing. That's, but basically narcissism, the best definition I've ever heard is narcissism is inability to feel your emotions. So from a heart level, that's how I would describe narcissism. That if I'm working with somebody who has narcissism, which is uncomfortable for them, then, and we all have it, it's a spectrum. We're all some level of narcissist. The more that you can learn to love your emotions, the more that goes away. Mentally, narcissism is, for the prefrontal cortex, is the feeling that you're better than somebody. And there's two forms of it. There's the kind that's like, I'm better than everybody. I think they call it the aggrandized narcissist. And then there's the malignant narcissist, which is very quietly, I'm better than everybody. So you'll often see in an organization, a CEO who's very like narcissistic outwardly, and then they'll have a bishop, I call it the bishop syndrome, who's sitting next to them, who's helping them execute on everything. And they're literally thinking, I'm better than this dumbass CEO, but they're really quiet about it. And they're taking all the power from the CEO through this somewhat codependent relationship because the CEO doesn't feel alone with this one person. And so anyway, I digress. So that's in the head, there's either I'm better than everybody and I'll say it and like, this is how great I am. Or there's the person who's quietly thinking it, who's like, and they're often in that bishop position. So that's the mental part of it. The emotional part of it is I don't feel fucking safe because they were told at a young age, you're not fucking safe. You can't have these emotions. You can't be there with all that feeling. So what you do to prevent the feeling, one of the things you do to prevent the feeling is judge other people. So every time you're judging somebody, you're just basically pushing down an emotional experience. So you could say, oh, if I couldn't judge this person, I would have to feel blank. And that's always true. So what I love about narcissism is that, I don't think anything would get done in this world without it. Meaning every teacher has a bit of narcissism. Every CEO has to have a bit of narcissism. Every leader has to, like, I fucking know something. I'm going to go around in the world and act as if I know it. And none of us know anything. We're all making this shit up. I remember somebody coming to me getting really angry, like, you just make this stuff up. And I'm like, yeah, just like somebody made up Amazon. That's how this shit works. We just make shit up. That's how it goes. And so there's something really lovely about it in the fact that they get things done and they can move stuff and it comes from a fact that they were hurt as a kid and they couldn't feel their emotions, and so they're doing something to still prove to dad or mom that I'm worthy. See, I deserve the love for who I am as I am. And so I'm going to do all the shit in the world emotionally, and I'm going to think that I'm good enough to do it. And so a lot of like really great things come from it. And if you look at our society, we really like following narcissists. Like we really like it.
Yeah, obviously.
Obviously. I mean, every rock star, it's just like kids learn at a young age. We want to follow somebody who looks like they know what the fuck they're doing. And so it's just part of our humanity. Obviously there's some problems with it, is that you feel alone and you feel separate and you feel not connected, and you feel better than, and all of that stuff is hard. And underneath all that is just this deep fucking amount of shame. So if you look at a lot of very hyper successful people, what you'll see is people who think they're better than people on this level and think there's something absolutely wrong with them and they need to prove themselves on a different level. And so they'll have both of those two things running at the same time, as one can't really exist without the other.
So what happens when you're working with somebody who's really high on that spectrum of better than? What happens when they start to do the work and they start to get in tune with their emotions? Do they lose their edge, Joe?
No, not at all. No, they become more effective typically. There is transition periods, however, meaning like if you're working with somebody like that, you don't do it quickly. You don't move out of that place. You have to do it slowly because you don't want to have like a narcissistic collapse, which can happen. So you really want a slow progression so that they can taste a new world slowly. It's just an introduction of emotions. And so that's part of this, it doesn't have to happen all at once, and it's usually not super effective for it to happen all at once. When they move away from their narcissism, oftentimes their teams are more empowered. They have to do less. They are more effective. They can be more creative because it's not all about drive. They can do it for the right reasons for themselves, meaning I don't have to have this growth to prove something to my dad, which is going to risk the company. I can have this growth because I don't care what my dad thinks. And then I'll have a much longer, bigger lasting legacy or whatever the rationale is that they're looking for. So they can make better choices generally because they have more options from which to choose from. Neither of them are going to guarantee success, meaning there are people who have hyper intelligent, massive amounts of shame, massive amounts of I think I'm better than that are very not successful. I mean, you meet them all the time in Silicon Valley. And so that doesn't guarantee success, though a lot of the successful ones are that. But also there's quite a few people who don't fit that model who actually have great success. So it's just a choice of fulfillment. And what it does is it doesn't guarantee your success. It guarantees fulfillment. It guarantees a sense of purpose. It guarantees not living in a toxic environment. It guarantees that you're not 50 years old going, what the fuck? I have a really nice house, but no wife, no kids who love me. And I'm trying to party like I'm 20 years old. And that's what it guarantees. Is it super effective in business? Absolutely. But there's lots of ways to do business effectively as far as results. There's not a lot of ways to do business effectively as far as results and fulfillment and a sense of purpose and where everybody in your organization feels like they're better people because they've been there for a year. And I don't give a shit who is listening to this. I know everybody wants that. If I could go to the most successful person in the world, say, okay, you're worth $300 billion and we're going to click this button and you're going to be, let's just say, in case of risk, 10% less effective. But everybody in the organization is going to feel empowered. You're going to feel more ease and enjoyment. You're going to feel more fulfilled. You're going to feel like you're even more proud of what's going on in your system, in your organization, and everything you're doing in the world. Everybody's going to pick that. And so, and the reality is it's usually a boost of like 10 or 15%. But there are transition periods that can be jumpy.
Yeah, I've seen it be a boost of over 30%. So Joe, first of all, I just want to say thank you. You have given me all of those things. So not only do I feel like you unlocked my potential as a leader and professionally, but you also have transformed my life, as I mentioned at the beginning of this, and helped me enrich my life in ways that I couldn't even possibly imagine, and it continues to unfold. I'm grateful that you're in my life. I love you and your wife very much. And I imagine there are going to be people that hear this that are going to say, okay, I need to work with Joe. I need some of that. How do people find your work, and how can people be introduced to the type of work that you do?
Yeah. So, the podcast is an easy way. We have 100 or more episodes on very specific topics. So that's an easy way to get to know the work. We have a series of courses, 3 of them online that anybody can sign up for. The emotional fluidity one is called the decisions course. So we talk about how that emotional fluidity can create decision making. The master class is generally the 7 things that I see hold back entrepreneurs. We only do it once a year. It's sold out in 3 days. We have to keep it small because we literally can't care for everybody in it the way we want to care for them. So if we don't, and then there's the connection course, which is the basic stuff, which is where I would say is a great way to start. And then we do free rapid coaching sessions and free little tasters of the work so you can get to know what it is, because it's not talking, it's all experiments. We literally are like, here's an experiment, go run it with a partner. It's very interactive, as you know, it's very interactive. So those are all great ways to get to know the work. As far as coaching goes, I only take on 12 clients. I have a waiting list. The people to get on my waiting list, you have to have gone through a Groundbreakers. Groundbreakers are usually sold out 6 months to a year in advance. So it's a pain in the fucking ass to have me coach you.
Tell me about it.
I know, but I'll
I'm teasing you.
But I'll work in anybody's company given that I have the time who's done Groundbreakers. So if you want the work in the company and the culture, which is I love doing, that's the way to get there.
Okay, great. And your website is?
Art of Accomplishment is the website, and it's also the podcast. And you can find me at FU Joe Hudson on Twitter.
That'll be our legacy. That'll be our legacy forever. You're stuck with us forever. That's amazing.
Somebody said I should get a tattoo of it on my forearm.
Oh, I don't know about that. That's
FU Joe
intense.
Hudson. I was like, nah.
Maybe not. Joe, I'm grateful for you. Thank you for taking the time for coming on. But more importantly, I'm grateful
Thanks for
having you in my life.
Yeah, I am honored to have worked with you. Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. Same.
Yeah.
Most of the time. All right. Bye, Joe.
All right.
Love you.
Bye.
See you later.
Thank y'all for listening today. If you're so inclined, please follow, subscribe, download, share, all of the things so that we can keep going. We appreciate your support so much. If you're interested in learning more, go to thecoeffect.co.